So, Goblins and Gnomes, why those two?
They really played to the spirit of Hearthstone in a way that Naxxramas also did, but in a more world-encompassing way. If you look at the way Goblins and Gnomes are handled in Warcraft, and certainly Warcraft 3 and 2, they have a long lineage of strife and frustration with one another. And that kind of tongue-in-cheek handling of those two races and their interactions really played to the values of Hearthstone, which is, you know, light and friendly and basically all fun involved. So it just felt like the natural move to that after the more dark and a little bit more brooding, slightly, in Curse of Naxxramas.
When they were on stage yesterday and revealing it, I heard the word new adventures being dropped. So I'm thinking, was that just adventures in the overall sense, or will there be something akin to what Naxxramas had?
I think overall sense is good. That said, we were very excited by the reception of Curse of Naxxramas, and we would like to do more where it makes sense to do things like that. We're trying to figure out just where and when is appropriate for those kind of things. We like how the content came out with that. We're interested in seeing how Goblins versus Gnomes changes in terms of the amount of content it's going to bring. Because the introduction of the new class, Mech, we went back and where it made sense with previous minions, if you look at the Harvest Golem, for instance, or the Mechanical Dragonling, and ascribe the Mech name to them. They kind of always wanted to be mechs. They felt like there was more in life than just being these small minions that come in and do a certain thing, and we also agreed with them, and this felt the right time to introduce them as such. What this does for the players really provide them an opportunity and go back and play with some very familiar cards, but in wholly new ways that may change up the decks that they're currently making in a way that Goblins versus Gnomes is only going to add to.
A lot of the new cards have like random elements to them, like in their Death Rattle or in their Battle Cry. Why this sort of emphasis, you might call that, on the randomness?
Random is something that we don't shy away from. We feel it's very important to a game like Hearthstone. It really plays to the skill of the player, and at the highest levels, you'll see something like random interact with the, in the player sense, not unlike how poker does. The skillful player is able to skillfully maneuver randomness in their benefit, and ultimately, it provides for great player stories, which has always been a big goal of Hearthstone, and ascribes to that. Gosh, whether you lost or won the game, you had a ton of fun doing it, and it's a story you get to tell friends later.
There's 120 cards in the new expansion. I'm thinking...
It's floating around,
yeah. Do you have any favorites?
Favorite for me, I'm biased being an art guy. I really liked Bouncing Blade, mostly because of the visual put to that. Just the way it bounces around the board and interacts with the objects on the board itself and into minions themselves really brought me back to Brawl, which was my favorite card from the base set. They both just had this fun, kind of evocative feeling when you saw them go off for the first time and the fifth time.
You aren't adding any new sort of card mechanics in this expansion, am I right?
No, we're not.
Any idea when you might be getting into that sort of territory?
We're very cautious whenever we introduce anything new to a game like Hearthstone. It's still really in its infancy. If you consider we released in March, that's not a lot of time to start adding a lot of new things at too great of a rate. We're very sensitive to the fact that anytime you change the meta, and be that by adding new minion types with mechs or new card effects as well, that anytime you do that, the players have a complexity that's put upon their shoulders to try and figure out and do more with. We agree that that's something that sounds exciting. Possibly future sets will see something like that. For now, the introduction of the minion type was felt to be enough, much as in Curse of Naxxramas, the Death Rattle, current Death Rattle card mechanic was played to in a way that allowed players to think of it in a new way. So we'll see when the time comes, but for now, we're really happy with how this is adjusting the game.
When is Goblins versus Gnomes coming out?
Next month. Can't wait.
No specifics, just December?
At December, as soon as possible.
Thank you very much for talking to us.
Thanks.